Please welcome for Mr. Kevin O'Leary.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Okay, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. This is actually a very important process, you know. It's sort of important that I think we talk about the future of the country, and particularly your future in this country. You know, people ask me all the time when I talk about Canada, what's your motivation? Why would you, who've never been a politician, want to get involved in this? What's your motivation? I think that's a great question. You should understand what motivates somebody to do anything. Let me explain myself. You know, my mother taught me years ago this concept of karma. If you've been successful, you've been lucky, you've got to give back. And I totally agree with that. And I give to charities, but I give back in another way. I've taken to teaching graduating cohorts of engineers. And I do it all over the place. And why engineers? Because generally about a third of a graduating cohort will start a business. And so I like to encourage entrepreneurship. I like to talk about not success, but failures to help them understand the lifestyle of entrepreneurship, mistakes I've made so they can avoid them. And I really enjoy these classes. Generally, these are cohorts in the evening, 6 to 9 o'clock at night. Sometimes they're huge, as many as 600 people, classes the size of this. But what happens afterwards is we always go out to the pub and we talk about, you know, what's going to happen next in their careers because they're about to graduate. What's been happening in the last couple of years in Canada, because I teach everywhere, McGill, right across the country, Notre Dame, MIT, you name it. But in Canada, this starts to happen, and it's invariably the same question, and it really troubles me, and I think you should think about what's happening here, and I'll tell you. Class is over, having a beer, and they say, Kevin, thanks for coming by, really enjoyed the class, whatever. But what I want to ask you about is this. Can you open up your Rolodex for me with the Apple guys, or the guys at Snap, or at Facebook, or at Uber, or down in Dallas with Cuban? You're doing deals with him. Or how about on the East Coast with TA Associates? You're investing in venture. Can you help me get financed down in the States? I want to start my company. And I'm saying, what? Why would you want to leave Canada? You're a robotics engineer. You're a chemical engineer. You're electrical. What are you talking about? Why don't you start it here? I'll help you get going here. They say, well, yeah, but I don't want to get paid in dollarettes. I want to get paid in dollars. I don't want to get taxed at 53.8%. I can't hire a team here. Please help me get started in the States. And I swear to you, when I make it big and sell my company, I'll come back and buy a cottage. I'll come back in the summer. What the hell is that? What is happening? How can that be the case for this great country? What has changed from the days when I did it to now? What occurred? What is changing people, the brightest people we have, to think of their future outside of their own country? That bothered me a lot, but that's not the straw that broke the camel's back for me. That's not what made me jump into this race. You can time my entry into this because I was around the periphery, barking at politicians that I don't like, enjoying my reach on social media, writing letters to weak leaders, explaining what they're doing wrong. But to get into the race itself, you can actually time it to this league. Trudeau's government put out a document that forecasted the future of Canada that was proposing deficits for 38 years in a row, leaving the country $1.5 trillion in debt. Now, I don't know about you, but I've got a 20-year-old son in engineering and a 24-year-old daughter. There's not a chance in hell I'm letting Trudeau do that to this country. That's not going to happen. Zero probability. Zero. Now, these are big numbers. Why should you care? Let's talk about it. $1.5 trillion debt with 36 million people means that your children and their children will be born into deficits of $40,000 to $60,000. It means that instead of the money that could have gone to their education, their health care, their social net, a military budget that protects our country, it won't go there. Up to 60% of it will go to service interest payments to people we don't even know. The Trudeau proposes to borrow from in perpetuity. destroying our standard of living in this country and yours. I ask you something. Think about Canada for a moment. We have everything that everybody in the world wants. We're the richest country in the world. Everything. Water, power, gas, wood. Every mineral known to man is found here. Where is it written in the Canadian Constitution that we should let it be managed by a toxic cocktail of mediocrity, incompetence, and sometimes stupidity? Why? 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 Where is it written we can't have leadership that can actually manage an economy and grow it? And why you should care is very simple. Canada was based on the promise of providing for its people forever on a growing economy. It works at 3% growth. All through my youth, Canada would go through recession sometimes, drop to 2%, bounce back up to 6%, come into 3%, and it provided for everything. The growth of the economy and what it provides for the people is what's so important. Now, listen, when Trudeau came in, I'm like everybody else, I'm willing to give any manager that I work with a chance. You know, I hire a new CEO for my companies. I always give them a chance. I give them a goal. I tell them, what can you do for us? And they give targets. Let me just get organized here. They provide a target, and I let them go to work. I'm a fair kind of guy that way. I invest in a lot of different companies. I consider the CEO of Canada to be its Prime Minister. Now, what I saw happen was Mr. Trudeau took over, good for him, and then he left Canada for 4 months, all around the world. He gave away $4.2 billion to foreigners. I thought, okay, he's building brand, maybe he's building his own brand, but he's doing something out there. $4.2 billion and didn't create one Canadian job. 0. That's when my spider tingly sense started to say, whoa, what's this kid doing? What's the game plan here? Now, he's been working for almost 2 years into his mandate. Almost half of it's gone. What have we seen occur? We've seen the economy go from 1.5% to 1, to 0.9, to 0.7, collapsing, going down. The way it manifests itself for you is no jobs. There's no sunny times. There's just a bare light bulb in your parents' basement waiting for a job somewhere. That's what's happening. He lied to you. You know damn well he did. He screwed you. Now, he did something really remarkable, and I'll hand him that. The reason, and if you look at the numbers, you know I'm a numbers guy. Look at what happened in the last election. For the first time ever, 18 to 35-year-olds came out in droves. Trudeau was very successful in getting something to happen in Canada that has never happened before.
The rich will never help the poor! One solution, platform! One solution, platform!
Wow. You know, if you're going to protest, don't put a mask over your face. I can't hear what you're saying. Freedom of speech, I like it. It's important. Back to my train of thought. What happened in the last election? Trudeau was able to motivate a new political force that is going to be incredibly powerful for the next 20 years. It's you. The truth is now, about any party in this country cannot win a majority mandate without capturing 60% of people between the ages of 18 and 35. You now have the power. You're it. Why are all these politicians coming here to see you? Because without you, they can't win. Those are the straight numbers. Now, my plan is very simple. I'm very proud that I can come to a place like this and get you motivated to come out and listen, because my plan is to actually claw back all of that support from Justin. Not because I don't think he's a good guy, because he lied to you and he doesn't deserve it anymore. Because if he can't get you a job, you should be incredibly pissed. Now let me ask you something. Let's be pragmatic together. We're all in this together. This is our country. You would have thought the morning Justin Trudeau woke up and saw the surprise election of Donald Trump, that would have registered to him a change in the entire landscape. Because it's true. Trump did do something extraordinary. No one thought he would win until he did. But he broadcast with distinct precision his plans. He was going to lower personal taxes, lower corporate taxes, deregulate his economy, eliminate any discussion of carbon taxes, and grow the economy and be competitive in every way globally to create a vibrant economy for its people. And in some ways, protectionist at that too. And remember, the U.S. is our #1 trading partner. In North America, we compete with Mexico, the United States, and then there's Canada. I would have thought Trudeau would have immediately said, wait a second, everything's changing. I've got to compete. As an economy, I have to be competitive. But he didn't do that. He just kept swimming like a salmon that was lost in the other direction, raising corporate taxes, raising personal taxes, imposing a new carbon tax on the economy when everybody else was swimming in the other direction. Why? Perhaps he doesn't know what he's doing. Maybe? Perhaps he's never read a balance sheet, never read an income statement, has never had to make payroll, has never felt the passion for what it takes to take a challenge like that. Maybe he's never worked hard in his life. These are harsh words, but it doesn't distract from the fact it's the truth. If you don't understand what it takes to grow a business from scratch, to maintain it, to provide for people, you're out of touch with Canadians. And I think he is, because he doesn't seem to give a damn about your plight anymore. I do. Here's my plan. I'm going to win this leadership race, and then I'm going to shine the light of transparency and accountability on Justin Trudeau for the next 2 years and make his life a living hell. Then, in 2019, we're not going to have an election. We're going to have an exorcism. That's what's going to happen. I am going to reverse every single policy that damages the economy that he's imposed, every tax that he's put on this country that has damaged its ability to compete. In fact, let me be specific. Whatever the Mexicans and the Americans do, we're going to match it. On corporate taxes, on personal taxes, on the regulatory environment of developing resources. We're going to match it. And then I'm going to get back on the plane and do what I do every day. I'm going to go to Mumbai, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Geneva, Zurich, New York, and tell the sovereign funds like Shell who have pulled out all their money out of Canada, ladies and gentlemen, Canada is open for business again. I want to compete. I want to compete. I want to develop our economy the same way our competitors are. Modi in India is talking about 7% economic growth there. He's digitizing everything. Why can't we do that? There's no reason we can't. Let's talk about that for a second, because ever since I came into this leadership race, I started getting phone calls from American CEOs of companies that have asked me a simple question off the record. They said, Kevin, there's some 50-50 chance you might be running this country in 24 months. We have a specific request of you. We would like to hire coders and engineers from countries like Iraq, Iran, Syria. Persian mathematicians are legendary. Many of you know this, and they lead some of the best teams in the world in developing some very complex robotics, biotechnology. Really high-paying jobs, start at 100, go to 250,000 annually. But they won't go to the United States anymore because they're worried that their families won't have access to travel visas, may run into issues. Trump is destabilizing the immigration policy of the U.S. We understand why, but nevertheless it's causing some issues with companies like that. Here's their request. Kevin, if we gave you $100 million and let you build or we would pay to build a coding center, a research center around a university, could be this one, would you allow us to hire an Iranian or a Syrian or a Jordanian or a Lebanese for that matter, and if they went through your vetting system in immigration and their children and their significant other did, would you give them all Canadian passports the day they started work so they knew their families were safe and they could grow them in Canada? Well, let me see if I would do that. How about yes? How about a phenomenal opportunity to compete globally now with the cultures and the values we've always had in this country? My parents had nothing. They came in through Halifax, Lebanese and Irish immigrants. They came in legally. They went through the process of being vetted. They started a company, you saw it in that video on Jean Talon, Kitty's Togs, and they grew that way. In my culture, from the matriarchal side, Lebanese culture, my grandmother was extremely strict. In our Lebanese culture, there's a Sunday dinner. The matriarch usually starts preparing at 5 in the morning. It's very complex to make that food. And if you didn't show up at 6:30 for dinner, you burned in hell in perpetuity. Now, I didn't understand how important that was when I was young, but that's the same way I am today. It's baked into my brain, and luckily I can enjoy that freedom. And I'm able to gather my family somewhere in the world every Sunday. And if they don't show up, they'll burn in hell. But they understand that. That's culture. That's what we enjoy in this country, the freedom to pursue our own, no matter where you came from, whatever your religion is. So let me be clear about the new party, the new Conservative Party. I'm calling myself a conservative expansionist. Why? I'm Irish Catholic, so if you're pro-life, I understand where you're coming from. My daughter, Savannah, pro-choice. She said to me, Dad, if you're going to get into this race and you don't give me what I want, not only will I not vote for you, I will campaign against you. Now, why you care about that? She runs all the social media at the Huffington Post worldwide. Not cool if I don't have her on side. Big problem for me. But my point is, I said, look, Savannah, what do you want? She said, I'm pro-choice. I said, I've got your back on that too. This party will never mandate morality or a compass in any way on how you live. That is your own business. LGBTQI, I've got your back. Just come and look at the people that work for me. I don't care who you marry, what makes you happy, that's your own business. We're all about growing this economy. That's what matters. And I'll be completely transparent. I'll disclose this. Alex Kenji, the young guy who runs O'Leary Ventures, is a card-carrying liberal. Can you imagine my mornings in the office every day? I have the only intelligent liberal working for me. I hire smart people. I don't care what they wear. I don't care what makes them happy. I don't care where they came from. I don't care what their religion is. It's none of my business. So I want to be clear to you that I'll always support whatever your moral compass is. It's yours, and it will remain that way, and this party will support it. Let's put that on the table. Now let's get down to business for a second. Some of you are commerce students. I love numbers. I'm an income statement guy. I love balance sheets. Let's take a big file in our country where we spend a lot of money. I asked to see the file on military spending, and I got it. We spend $20.1 billion a year on the good men and women that are in our military as peacekeepers and warriors, and $5 billion in procuring equipment for them. That's 25 billion smackaroos. That's a lot of money. That's a ton of cash. So what I like to do when I look at a company for the first time, show me the income statement. Let me go down and look at the big numbers. I looked down and I found a really interesting one. Who's got the biggest borders on earth? Canada. No country has a bigger border than we have. To maintain a sovereignty, or to maintain a sovereign, you have to patrol your borders. What do? We load up C-140 twin turboprop aircraft with an L3 camera made in Burlington, Ontario, one of the most sophisticated surveillance cameras in the world, Canadian technology, and we start monitoring the borders by flying these aircraft around. Operating costs per hour, I'm a bit of an airplane guy, about $35,000 an hour. Costs billions to do this. I'm looking at it and I say to the guy who's presenting me the budget, can't we put the L3 camera in a drone? He said, yeah, we could do that. I said, well, why don't we have a drone program? Do you know we're the only G7 country without a drone program? What's that? You get 150 engineers, buy off-the-shelf Global Hawk drones, put the L3 camera in it, fly them at an operating cost of under $2,000 an hour. Save $2 billion. Why wouldn't we do that? And advance our surveillance to a whole new level, and our search and rescue. Why aren't we doing that? Because Justin can't read a balance sheet. He doesn't know what an income statement is. He doesn't know how to save any money. He only knows how to tax you. That's it. We've got to be more efficient in this country. We have to look for opportunities to spend that money in a better way. Give this $2 billion savings back to the military. Let them acquire better technology, better ordnance. That's the whole idea. And there's lots of low-hanging fruit. Now you look at Trudeau's cabinet. He talked about diversity, 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 diversity. I get it, and I support that concept. He never uttered the word, ever, competence. Competence, the ability to achieve a goal when it's set. The idea that you would have some executional excellence in your cabinet. Somebody with a track record of getting stuff done. Definition of leadership for me? Ask great people to do extraordinary things for you. Build businesses that way. Achieve goals that way. Competence. I think it's time that we get rid of mediocrity and incompetence in government and we bring the A team to Canada. Wouldn't you prefer that? Wouldn't that be better for the country? Let's take an example of something that happened this week. You know, you've seen these images of people crossing the Manitoba border in the freezing cold with children across a frozen river. Why is that happening? We have a law in this country. If you go to a port of entry and you're a refugee applying for refugee status in the United States, and you say to the officer at the border, if you came by rail, by car, or you walked up to it, or you flew in by aircraft, and they ask you, are you applying for refugee status in the U.S., and you say yes, they turn you back. But because there's a loophole in the law, you can walk anywhere across the 49th parallel, walk into our country 15 feet without any papers at all, without us knowing who you are, where you came from. In other words, jump the line of the people that are legitimately going through the process of applying for status in Canada, that want to immigrate here or be refugees here, get way ahead of them, be accosted by the RCMP, brought into welfare, we pay your health care, you can try 7 times an appeal if we don't give you refugee status the first time. Then if you're not happy, hire a lawyer and contest it for years at a cost of $500,000 per person to you. That is not cool. I am completely for immigration, legal immigration. I don't want anybody just walking into our country that feels like they should be here and burdening our tired social and healthcare system, and we still don't know who you are? No. The most unfair part of that is there are people from all around the world that want to become Canadians legitimately and legally, and we're tying up courts with people that don't want to play by the rules. So, there is a minister called the Minister of Public Safety, his name, Ralph Goodale. I don't know Ralph. I've never listened to anything he said. I happened to catch an interview on Sunday with Evan Solomon where he asked a very simple question. A political reporter asking the Minister of Public Safety what he's going to do about this immigration problem in the porous border. Now, there must be some kind of a disease you catch if you've been a politician too long, because he spent 8 minutes and said nothing. That's the kind of incompetence I'm going to fire when I get to Ottawa. That guy is gone, and all of those liberals are gone. I want people that can do their jobs. Now let's talk about a new form of federalism, if you want to call it that. Our provincial system, our parliamentary system, has some challenges. What happens when you set a mandate? Because I'm not making 25 promises. I'm making one. Politicians love to give you a whole bunch of promises and then deliver on nothing. I'm not a politician. One goal, 3% GDP growth. That's what I want. I want everybody to get a job, and I want Canada to work again on healthcare and education, military spending, and the social net. 3% growth, that's the plan. Now, what happens when you get a black swan situation like a Kathleen Wynne? What do you do if you're Prime Minister? Now, that woman is a complete incompetence in every way. If she had worked for me in any of my companies, I would have fired her a long time ago. But I can't do that. And yet she would be holding me back from my commitment to you to grow this country at 3%. So what can I do about that? Let's say, for example, her idea to grab more cash and piss it away with her carbon tax. We're already $308 billion in debt. Here's my plan. Any premier that does not get on board with me for 3% mandated growth, which is what we're going to do, I'll simply deduct a carbon tax right out of their transfer payment. Right out of there. But first I'll communicate with the people directly. When I saw the disaster that Kathleen Wynne was becoming, when I realized she didn't know what she was doing, when I saw her sign wind electrical contracts for 80 cents a kilowatt hour, when the cost of energy is 2.3 cents, she paid 40 times more than any rational person would, I realized she's a complete, vicious cocktail of incompetence and mediocrity built together. And I wrote a letter. As a Canadian taxpayer, as a resident of Ontario, she was sitting at 46% approval ratings in the poll. She ignored it. I wrote another letter. 4 million people read it. And I went, ooh, this social media stuff is interesting. And then I wrote another letter. Millions more read that. Just telling everybody the truth, because she was not able to spell it out herself. She spins the BS. She won't tell you the truth. I will. She's now at 13% in the polls, and I'm not finished. I'm going to keep going. A leader like that requires adult supervision from Ottawa. So does Rachel Notley. She's destroying Alberta. Huge engine of growth. I will go meet with all of them in private, and we'll discuss our future together. You'll either be my friend or you won't. But a Prime Minister has a lot of tools at hand, and I only have one objective: 3% GDP growth in this country. I think everybody gets it, and that is the plan. Now, in order to do this, there's only 14 days left in the Conservative membership roll-up, which is extraordinary. Never in Canadian history have we ever had, in any party ever, 14 candidates left at the end of a race. These are extraordinary times. They're all good men and women. And I promise them all, if they have good ideas, I'll take them to Ottawa with me. That's not a problem. But you have to be involved. You are the new power in Canadian politics. 18 to 35-year-olds, you rule. Nobody can win a majority mandate without winning 60% of you back. So what I'm doing here tonight has been multiplied many times. I'm crisscrossing the country talking to you about the future. You have to make a decision. You have to pick a leader and decide who can beat Justin Trudeau. That's the key. Je suis le seul qui peut battre Justin Trudeau. I'm working on my French too. But that's the decision we've got to make. That's the challenge. So I'm asking for support. I definitely want to do this, and I think we have a huge opportunity to meet Canada. Such bounty, such riches, such potential. This country should be run like Switzerland, and it will be when I get to Ottawa in 2019. Thank you very, very much. Now, I'm happy to take some questions, and I'm hoping you have some. Let's talk. We'll start down here. What I'll do is I'll just repeat them if I can hear them, so everybody can hear it. Stand up and ask it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for coming here. We're happy to see you. You mentioned border security, and I think that's pretty critical, and particularly with the Arctic. Russia has demonstrated its abilities to sort of quietly eat up territories, and considering that climate change will surely result in the melting of our north, there are a lot of natural resources there that are going to be up for grabs.
Right.
How would you consider investing in military spending and protecting our Arctic? And would you consider an aircraft different than the F-35, perhaps with two engines that would be better suited to control those areas?
Sure. First of all, the Arctic is going to be a contested space, there's no question about it. This man just asked, what about border security? What about the Arctic? What about sovereignty of the Arctic? We own it, it's Canadian. The first thing you have to do if you want to establish your ownership is patrol it. And right now, we're under patrolling it because we don't have the budget for it, and we're not using the right technology. That goes back to the whole drone program. We have to be able to immediately patrol every square inch, and drone technology is the way we're going to do it. Military spending is a huge problem. We made a commitment to NATO that we spend 2% of GDP on military. We're spending 0.9. The fact is we can't afford it because we stopped growing the economy. That is a huge challenge. So at the end of the day, the climate change issue goes back to, we as Canadians, 73% of us, want to support the Paris Accord. We're debating on how to do that. And let me explain something about cap and trade, why it doesn't work. As I said earlier, you got to think about your strategy here. You don't want to tax companies, you want them to innovate. You want them to do with their capital what it takes. In the automotive industry years ago, basically we said, okay, we'll give you 40 years. Every 10 years you've got to cut your emissions in half and get twice the mileage out of a gallon of gas. And we mandated that in both countries, the United States and Canada. And we left the money on their balance sheets, and that's where things like the catalytic converter came in, more efficiency in engines. There's technology today in Canada in carbon sequestration, carbon scrubbing, all of it, we own it. We should be selling it around the world, and we don't. Why don't we have a salesperson in every embassy providing our technology to India and China? Because Trudeau never thought of that, I guess. It's a huge mistake. But we are extremely advanced in sequestering carbon, and we can do a much better job. Patrolling the borders, dealing with climate change, all requires money. Got to grow the economy. That's the key. That is the answer. Next question. Yes, ma'am, right there.
So we've seen a lot of issues with us, my generation particularly, struggling in the next few years to be able to buy a house because of the skyrocketing prices and the higher qualifications in order to buy. So what are you going to do to make sure that people like me, 10 years down the road, can be able to afford a house?
Right. Let me explain what's happening in housing. People haven't really thought through the market aspects of this. One of the reasons that housing prices have quadrupled on you in just a short period of time is we have a very punitive legislative environment around allocating land for home building. If you want to build a home on a new piece of land in Canada, you go through a punitive process of getting it zoned to create housing, whether it's apartment housing, whether it's standalone housing, semi-detached. And that's one of the reasons that we find ourselves in a situation where we have a lack of supply. We have to deregulate and make it easier for municipalities in every city to find more space to build housing on. It's not a matter of trying to control a market. It never works. We have a tremendous amount of people all around the world wanting to buy real estate in Canada. We don't have enough of it. And we've got this really punitive regulatory environment at every level of government to allow land to be allocated and zoned for housing. I'm going to change that. You want to solve this problem materially, you've got to increase the amount of land available for housing by 25%. That stalls out the growth and the stratospheric asset push that's happened to housing. It's not affordable anymore because you have to spend more than 30% of your after-tax income just to maintain a mortgage or rent. Got to fix that. And it'll happen slowly. There won't be a massive adjustment in pricing. We'll slowly zone more land for growth, let the private sector build homes, let them put that capital to work, and solve our problem as a country. They did it in Denmark, they did it in Finland, they did it in England, they did it in Switzerland. We can do it too. We just need better leadership. You've got to kind of understand why it's happening. You know, the biggest business in Canada is Canada. That's what it is. It's led by someone who has never made payroll. That makes no sense. I'm going to do Justin Trudeau a really big favor, and I'm not going to ask for anything in return. I'm going to help him find his true destiny, because it's not running Canada. Yes, sir, over there.
Basically, two questions. One is, you mentioned lowering corporate taxes. What's your plan regarding closing the loopholes with taking money out of Canada and being taxed in the safe havens? That's one question. Second question, talking about the education. I'm really pleasantly surprised to see so many young people here, because I had a really nasty incident last night when I was trying to sign up for this meeting. I used my daughter's account, Facebook account, because I don't have my own, to check, and accidentally I clicked that she will attend this meeting. Immediately the hate started. Unfortunately, most Queen's graduates, why is she daring to come to this meeting? Do you have any plan to stop the left turn of the educational institution?
Well, there's a lot of questions in there. Let's go back to corporate tax. You know, we don't need the lowest taxes, we need competitive. We need to be competitive. We need it so that if you're going to build a new plant and you're looking at America, Mexico, Canada, we need to compete. We need to have the same taxes that they have, and we can do that. This is not about a race to the bottom. This is a race to be competitive, number one. And you know, people say to me, what are you going to do about people who take their money offshore? Look, you either play by the rules or you don't. If you break the law, you're going to be... I don't want to support people breaking the law. I pay taxes. I pay too much in taxes. I want to reduce the taxes because they're not fair. Anybody paying more than half their income to the government when you know they waste a third of it is horrific, and that's where we're at. Most provinces now are well north of 50%. That's crazy. People that dodge taxes are breaking the law. It's not something I'm going to support. You probably go to jail when you do that. That's your own business. If you want to take that risk, I'll throw you in jail. You can't break the law. You have to abide by it, but we can fix the tax rates, that's for sure. Regarding free speech, I'm never going to change that. People can say what they want. People are smart enough now, looking at what's happening with social media. The biggest risk I see for Canada and journalism in this country is because social media is so spontaneous, we do need to develop a strong journalistic ethic that makes sure they check their facts before they publish. Because they're trying to compete with social media, sometimes they don't do their work. I always want this country to have a very effective, honest source of information so that every Canadian can look at what a journalist publishes from a credible source and say, that's real news, versus all the other crap we go through. But at the end of the day, the world's changed forever. Social media is politics. The next election is about how you reach directly to people. As we speak now, this is being broadcast live on my Facebook page. I bet you by tomorrow morning, 500,000 people have seen it. Did it yesterday at Ryerson. That's past 400,000 now. Communication, telling people the truth. I think we're ready for leadership that actually tells you the truth. I'd rather say, look, here's the good, the bad, and the ugly of our situation. Just tell the truth. Why do you need to spin BS all the time if you're a politician? Where do they catch that disease anyways? Where'd that come from? What are they hiding? Why not just tell the truth? You're either doing your job, getting towards your goal, or you're not. That's the essence of leadership. Tell the truth even when it's not fun to tell it. You've got to have people trust you. That's what leadership's about. The minute you lie in a relationship, let's ask yourself this, okay? Let me give you some advice, having given a lot to people who fall in love of all races and nature. I'm a romantic, you know that? And I always say this: the first time you lie to your significant other, you lose 50% of your equity and you never get it back. Same for politicians. That's not going to happen to me, and I'm never going to do that to you. But you think about that. You're cheating on your boyfriend, your girlfriend, and you get caught, you deserve what happens to you. Better to tell the truth. Don't you agree? Yes. Yes, sir, right there in the middle.
I'm wondering, with your Irish heritage, what you're doing for St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, man, that's a good question. So when I grew up, my dad would always take me to the Irish parade in Montreal. It's the second largest in the world. Those Irish in Montreal like to really have a good time. So I'm going back home, I'm taking my son, and we're going to the Irish parade in Montreal. St. Paddy's parade in Montreal is if you've never been, you gotta go. Montreal is the best of New York and Paris put together with a bunch of crazy Irish guys in it. It's fantastic. That's it. That's where I'll be. Is anybody upstairs here have a question? All right, right there.
Thanks for coming. I totally opened my eyes on signing up on my way out. So, the question I have is about natural resources. You mentioned about technology and getting it out into the world in Canada, but what about our natural resources? Where do you stand on that?
Great question. Great question. Question is, what about our natural resources? Let me pose a question to you, okay? You know this concept of equalization payments, where a wealthy province provides money to one that's in distress. And that intuitively sounds like it makes sense, but let's talk a little bit deeper into the malaise that creates. Let's take a province like Nova Scotia or New Brunswick. They have immense natural resources in natural gas. Now, they were worried with old fracking technology 5 years ago that would cause problems to the water. And in the early iterations of that technology, it did. But that's all been changed now. There's new cementing technologies developed in Texas and Saskatoon that solve that problem. It's called advanced extraction. And we've still got a government out there that's basically shutting down the development of that resource, thousands of jobs and billions in revenue, because they need nat gas for heating, and there's lots of other ways to sell it to the eastern seaboard. Now, do you think it's right that a province that's well managed, like Saskatchewan, where they're developing their advanced extraction and making lots of money, should pay for a province that doesn't have the wherewithal to actually lift the moratorium and start developing their own? In other words, if you had 2 children and one was very interested in working, went out and got a job, and the other said, just keep giving me allowance forever, I don't feel like working, I'm just going to sit in the basement and watch TV. We got a few provinces that are doing that. So we've got this strange incentive. They don't actually have to do anything to make their economy grow by developing the natural resources. They just put moratoriums on it and put out their hand to the rest of Canadians and say, gimme, gimme, gimme. All going to change when I get to town. That's not going to happen anymore. If you're punitive to your province, if you won't develop its natural resources, if you want to hold back job creation and stop our objective as a collective, as a country, to get to 3%, you will not be my friend. And how that manifests itself, let's wait and see. But the first thing I'm going to do is go to the people and explain what's going on. I wrote that letter to Nova Scotians last week. Got lots of feedback. Turns out a lot of people would like to develop those natural resources. It's the beginning of my campaign to encourage the leadership there to do the right thing for their people and their country. We have to work together. So a strong federal leader. Some of the other candidates are proposing putting more of the decisions economically down to the provinces. But what happens when you end up with a leader like a Rachel Notley or a Kathleen Wynne? They need strong adult supervision from Ottawa. That's going to matter a lot. And that's what they're going to get with me. We're going to develop our natural resources. Yes, sir.
What is your plan to help small businesses and new entrepreneurs to grow and prosper?
Yeah, that's a great question. What am I going to do for small business? 70% of new jobs in Canada come from small businesses. Small businesses that are successful get bigger, create more jobs. The problem we've got now, too much regulation, taxes too high. Venture capital does not flow easily into Canada because it finds much better, richer soil to invest their seeds of opportunity. Role of government is not to create jobs. Role of government is not to pick winners. Role of government is not to bail out companies that are failing. The role of government, the O'Leary government, is to provide a rich soil, an environment that's very competitive, so you keep the money, you invest in your business, and other capital comes because you're in a competitive environment where people want to invest. Today, the soil in Canada is poisoned. You can't grow a weed here. Trudeau has sprayed insecticide all through the economy, destroyed the ability to grow a business completely. Taxes too high, too much regulation, moratoriums on growth and development. He just sits there spraying poison into the soil every day. Gotta go. He's gone in 2019. Let's go upstairs again. Do we have another one? Yes, ma'am.
Hi there, I was wondering what your position is for Indigenous issues in Canada.
I can't hear you. A little louder.
What's your position on Indigenous issues in Canada?
Business issue? Oh, great. Okay, good question. That's been a complicated file for a long time. I've started to meet with some of the leaders there. It turns out many of them are very entrepreneurial. Let me give you an example. We have $219 billion of infrastructure projects, hydroelectric, pipelines, nat gas, you name it, tied up or canceled in courts. It's just crazy. We're the can't-do country. So, for example, we spend $12 billion buying Saudi and Venezuelan oil in the St. Lawrence that comes in on tankers that if any one of those breaks, we destroy our environment because we can't figure out how to get a pipeline from where our oil is to the East Coast. How dumb is that? Because the mayor of Montreal doesn't want a pipeline. I'm going to Montreal this week to see the parade, and while I'm there, I'm going to hang with the mayor for a while. I'm sure we can work it out. That's my whole point. I want to get my hands dirty in these things. The Indigenous and First Nations people have a proposal called the Eagle Spirit Pipeline, one that they're developing themselves. They're over in China right now trying to get capital for it. I would support that project because the chances of that getting tied up in court are zero. It's their deal. We need to support more of those entrepreneurs in First Nations to help them get their deals done because they're like us. We're all Canadians. We don't want to tie each other up in court. We've got to be more flexible in giving people what they want if it's their equity. They have the right to stop it, but they all want jobs too. This is a delicate matter of negotiations, but they certainly want the same things. And by the way, while we're on pipelines, and people say to me, why do you want to do pipelines? Here's what we're going to do as Canadian people. If you want to build a pipeline and you're private sector doing it, there's one thing you're going to do for me. We're going to put a fiber optic pipe beside the pipeline, right attached to it, loaded with fiber, and provide a gateway to every community in Canada. You're going to pay for as the private sector. You, the Canadian people, will own the bandwidth of this fiber. It will monitor the pipeline, its temperature, any leaks. Anybody approaches it, it will see it. But the key is that we can provide that conduit, that basic pipeline, which is a pathway to put high-speed fiber to every community in Canada at an extremely low cost. I mean, I wonder why no one thought of that already. I mean, they should be doing it because you're already building the pipeline, you're already excavating the land, you're putting in place two things. Pipelines are the modern-day railroads, but while you're doing it, put in the fiber. Our country will be very competitive with everybody having 100 up, 100 down internet, which we can do using that idea. But that's the kind of thing that Trudeau never thought of. Doesn't run a business, that's why. Another question. Yes, ma'am, right there.
I'm not sure if you heard her question correctly. She actually asked about the Indigenous population, not pipeline. So I would assume she's referring to the fact that they have lower health outcomes, education outcomes, and the rest of us in Canada enjoy. What would you do to address that?
Well, I think the biggest problem with all of their issues has a lot to do with the lack of economic growth in their communities. That's what I've heard from their own leaders. They're asking, some have issues around land ownership. That's an issue, as you know. They also have huge economic issues because there's a tremendous amount of challenges on health care and just economic growth. There is none. I think you want to supply somebody their own ability to grow their future. And I think what we have to do is allow them, particularly in the lands they own and control, to have some economic development, which is what people have been trying to do now for 40 years. You want to solve that problem in perpetuity, there has to be economic growth. There has to be jobs for young people. I haven't heard one First Nations leader say they don't want a job for their family. Not one. They don't want constant handouts. They don't want that anymore. They want to build an economy within their own society and their own beliefs. That's what I'm hearing, and that's what I'm going to support. It's a complicated file, though. That includes healthcare, education, and a social network. That's what we have to provide. And the only way we can get that, you got to get economic growth within their communities. We have not solved our problem if the rest of us are growing at 3% and they have zero growth. That's not a solution. So that's my answer. A sound and good economic foundation.
Just a quick announcement. We are passing mics around, so please slide over a little bit.
Okay, let's go right there on the aisle, sir, right there.
Well, as a proud Canadian who's very proud of our men and women in uniform, it makes me happy to hear that you're committed to increasing our defense spending and our defense capabilities. But I'm curious, Justin Trudeau has said that he's committed to increasing the amount of peacekeeping operations that our soldiers are engaged in, and perhaps even seeking a seat in the Security Council. I'm wondering what your opinion is on that and where you stand on those kind of policies.
You know, Canadians have a unique brand, and I saw it myself in the late 60s when I lived in Cyprus. The Danish, the Finns, and the Canadians were peacekeepers there, and the concept of peacekeeping, it's not peace. You're getting shot at every day. It's the hardest job in the world. It's incredibly complex because you're basically in the middle of two warring factions. In that case, it was the Greek Cypriots and the Turks that took over and invaded half of Cyprus. So I actually met Canadian peacekeepers there, and I realized it is actually a job of a warrior to do that. You're actually armed and you're defending yourself and both sides at the same time. But as a result of that, Canadians have a remarkable brand in the Middle East. We are the most respected country when it comes to peacekeeping. But at the end of the day, the only way to be a strong peacekeeper is to have a highly trained military force that are actually warriors. Some of the time they're used for peacekeeping, but our brand itself, along with our support of NATO, gives us a unique situation. The problem is, and I want you all to understand this, Trump, last 2 weeks, sent a shot over our bow and that of Germany and all the other NATO members. He is not going to pay the bill anymore for our delinquents. We committed to 2% of GDP. We're paying 0.9. We actually should be spending 40 billion. We're spending 20 billion. This is a problem. We can't commit to that spending unless we get our economy growing. We need to be growing at 3 if we're going to spend 2% of GDP on military. It's a big issue. This is a big file and a big problem. It's a great question. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for coming. I was the candidate, conservative candidate in the last election here. One of the reasons thank you for coming. I was a conservative candidate in the last federal election. And one of the reasons I entered the political arena and not being a politician was veterans and our military. So it dovetails with the question that was just asked. But I'd like to give you as an opportunity to answer a question that the Prime Minister did not answer at the town hall meeting here in January. I had a question to ask in that town hall meeting, and I listened to the Prime Minister as he danced around every single question. And I'm not exactly. Actually, I'm feeling a little wild just going back to that. But here's the question. It's on behalf of a lady whose name I do not know. She asked a question. It was a fair question on veterans. It was on the Veterans Charter. And after the Prime Minister did not answer her, she sat down, and I could hear her, but she was just about 2 rows behind me. She said, "He did not answer my question." I tried that day to get the Prime Minister's attention, and he would not.
And the question is?
She was asking, why have you, despite your commitment, not given the commitment to reinstitute the lifetime pensions for veterans, to get rid of the lump sum disability awards, which is not working with the new charter? Don't scrap the charter entirely, keep that which is working. But do what you said you would do in the election and bring back the pensions for life. He did not answer it. Instead, what he has done is he has started the legal action being resumed against the veterans of us. So I'd like to give you a chance to
Yeah, so let me tell you why he didn't answer the question. He can't afford it. That's why. When you serve your country and you take the ultimate risk to sacrifice your life for your people, you deserve respect in perpetuity for the rest of your life. That's what we committed to our veterans. But now, because our economy is not growing anymore, he could never say yes to that. And you simply can't afford it. Just as you can't afford the commitments to health care or to the military spending or our NATO commitment, we can't afford any of it. And that's why the core problem is we've got to grow at 3%. You know, it's not just unfair, but when you make a commitment like that, there shouldn't be any legal way to get out of it, because you made a commitment on behalf of the risk they took. And veterans should be supported, but the cupboard is bare. The squabbling that occurred on health care just 6 weeks ago, where the provinces were fighting with the federal government, is because the economy's collapsed. It's a 0.7% growth. You can't solve that problem, sir, without growing the economy. It can't be done. And let me tell you something. Stunning to me is to watch Trudeau spend $4.2 billion in foreign countries and leave that woman here abandoned. That's what really happened. He should be ashamed of himself. I'm not kidding. Yes, sir.
Kevin, thanks for coming today. I kind of just wanted to ask you, in regards to, thank you. By the way, so me being a 2019 grad, I don't feel more excited about
Yeah. We don't sell water as a country. It is one of the most precious resources, second to oil, frankly. And the challenge we've got as a country is to make sure that it maintains its pristine quality, because it provides for a tremendous amount of the resources that we have, both in wildlife and just for people. I mean, water is precious. In the next 20 years, that resource is going to become more valuable than any other commodity, because in many places around the world, they don't have it. And the climate is changing. Canada, as I said earlier, is rich in everything, including water. Really, water is about managing supply, and it's about making sure it maintains its quality. I'm going to answer one more question because we're running out of time here. Let's go with this young lady right here.
Canada's known for its world-class health, but last year we had the highest ever record average wait times for mandatory procedures.
Yes.
What can the federal government potentially do to make sure Canadians have faster, more reasonable access to health care?
The questions about health care. It's true in this country, if you get a catastrophic disease, we are absolutely spectacular at helping you. But if you want a hip replacement, if you want cataract surgery, if you want a limb replaced, you wait forever. And that's because we are not utilizing our technology at full capacity. Most MRI machines in this country are only running at 60% capacity. The healthcare mandate is provincial, but the problem is federal. And so what we have to do is start looking at other models. Britain, Switzerland, Finland have all gone to 2 tiers. But I can't mandate that as the federal government. The Health Care Act has a solution to it. If you ever want to read it, it's the size of a telephone book, but there's a little clause in there. When Tommy Douglas wrote it, there was a clinic called the Shouldice Clinic. It's in Ontario. It's run by the Shouldice family. And why I want to bring this to your attention is it may be the solution for all of us in Canada. The Shouldice Clinic only does one procedure, hernia. So if you have a problem and you have a hernia, it's one of the only places on earth where they can stitch you back up without using metal mesh. Everybody else puts a piece of mesh in you to support your intestine from falling out of your body. They have developed a technique back in the 40s where they have solved for that. Now the reason you don't want a metal mesh is 5% of people reject it, and then that's the very nasty operation after you've recovered. So you want to go to Shouldice. 37 procedures a day. People from all around the world go there. And those people are charged the price of a hospital bed, the procedure, thousands of dollars, and they pay it. The rest of those beds are provided for free within our healthcare system. They've balanced both world-class procedures, world-class because everybody around the world goes there. They sell that service to people that want access, and they provide it for free to Canadians. I'm starting to think there's an opportunity in that model, because those people are paying for all the equipment that Shouldice has, and I think we should encourage other provinces to use that model already built into the Health Care Act. You don't have to rewrite the law. It's in there already. This is the potential solution, because we have the greatest surgeons, the best procedures, care that's incredible. Technologies that we have in our hospitals are world-class. People want access to it. Let's let them pay for it. And then we'll reap the benefits. Why not? As the Shouldice has done. It's a 2-tier system, works in Switzerland, and reduces wait times by 80%. That answers your question. You got to think about creative ideas and then encourage the provinces to do it. That is a provincial mandate, but I already hear many premiers are interested in looking at the Shouldice model, in looking at the Swiss model. That could be the solution for all of us. Listen, everybody, thank you for coming out. We've had a wonderful time here tonight.